The void between stars had a way of making time feel irrelevant. Alara Vance knew this better than most as she gazed through the observation deck of her small survey vessel, the Stardust. 3 months into a 6-month deep space charting mission, and the isolation had become a comfortable companion rather than the adversary many space travelers found it to be. Alara preferred working alone. Corporate survey teams came with politics, regulations, and the constant need to justify every decision. Independent contractors like herself had freedom. Freedom to explore the edges of known space on their own terms, even if it meant stretching the safety protocols now and then. Proximity alert to uncharted anomaly, announced the ship's AI assistant. Density patterns suggest a previously undocumented nebula formation approximately 23 light hours from our current position. Alara swiped through the sensor readings with practiced precision. Interesting. No previous mentions in the database. Negative. This region has been designated as Uncharted Space Zone USC 479. Last official survey conducted over 70 years ago with significantly less advanced equipment. The holographic display showed a swirling mass of gases and cosmic dust, unusually dense and compact. But what caught Alara's attention was something else entirely. A faint signal emanating from within the nebula's heart. "Are you detecting a transmission?" she asked, enhancing the reading. Affirmative. Signal detected. Unable to classify according to known communication protocols. Pattern suggests artificial origin rather than natural stellar phenomena. Alara felt the familiar rush of discovery that had drawn her to this career. Unknown signals in uncharted space were the kind of find that could fund her expeditions for years. Of course, regulations required her to report the discovery and wait for a properly equipped team to investigate. She had never been particularly good at following regulations. "Plot an approach vector," she commanded. "Let's see what we're dealing with." "I must advise against this course of action," the AI responded with its programmed caution. Exploratory Directive 17 requires independent surveyors to maintain observation distance from unidentified phenomena until override protocol using captain's authority, Alara interrupted. "Log that I'm conducting a preliminary safety assessment to determine potential navigation hazards." The AI fell silent for a moment, its programming accepting the technically valid justification. Course plotted. Estimated arrival at nebula perimeter in 14 hours. Alara studied the signal more closely. It repeated in cycles of approximately 147 seconds, but with subtle variations that seemed almost deliberate. It wasn't random cosmic noise, nor was it any standardized distress beacon used by known spacefaring civilizations. The structure was complex, layered, unlike anything in the database. As the Stardust approached the nebula over the following hours, Alara conducted every remote analysis possible. The composition showed unusual concentrations of exotic particles, and light behaved strangely near its boundaries, refracting in ways that defied standard physics models. The closer they came, the more unusual the readings became. Entering nebula perimeter in 5 minutes, the AI announced. "Sensors are experiencing calibration difficulties. Recommend reduced speed and enhanced shields." The view from the observation deck had become spectacular and unsettling in equal measure. The nebula, which Alara had already begun thinking of as the Silent Nebula for its unusual dampening effect on standard communications, displayed colors that seemed to shift unnaturally. Swirls of deep purple and electric blue gases formed patterns that almost resembled writing before dissolving back into chaos. Maintain course. Increase sensor sensitivity and compensate for interference. The Stardust pushed forward into the cosmic cloud, its external lights creating eerie shadows in the gas formations. As they penetrated deeper, the ship's systems began to exhibit anomalies. Navigation instruments showed phantom readings, gravity stabilizers fluctuated unpredictably, and the view screens occasionally displayed impossible geometries that made Alara's eyes hurt if she looked directly at them. Warning, multiple system errors detected. The AI reported its voice glitching. Recommend immediate withdrawal. But the signal had grown stronger, more distinct. Alara could feel they were close to something significant, perhaps the greatest discovery of her career. Maintain course, she ordered, manually adjusting the navigation controls as automated systems faltered. For 3 days, the Stardust crawled through the nebula, following the signal's strengthening pulse. Sleep came fitfully for Alara, filled with dreams of vast, geometrically impossible structures and whispered voices speaking in patterns similar to the signal. When awake, she found herself becoming increasingly certain that whatever awaited them was ancient beyond comprehension. On the 4th day, the nebula suddenly thinned, revealing a vast, empty pocket within its swirling mass. And there, suspended in the void like a forgotten monument to some lost civilization, was the source of the signal. "My God," Alara whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. A vessel, if such a mundane term could apply to something so alien, hung in space before them. Colossal in scale, it dwarfed the Stardust like a whale beside a minnow. Its architecture defied conventional engineering, combining organic, spiral structures with crystalline protrusions that seemed to grow from a central mass rather than having been constructed. Parts of it pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, while others remained dark and lifeless. Unable to estimate complete dimensions, the AI reported, its tone flat but somehow conveying awe nonetheless. Conservative assessment places the object at approximately 3.7 kilometers in length, with a mass equivalent to a small city. Structure appears to combine both technological and biological components in configurations unknown to existing databases. Alara circled the Stardust around the massive derelict, conducting detailed scans. The vessel showed no signs of external damage that would explain its abandonment. No weapon impacts, no collision trauma. It simply existed, silent and perfect in its alien majesty, as though its creators had simply stepped away moments ago. Yet the subtle patina of micrometeor impacts and cosmic radiation damage told a different story. This ship had drifted here for an almost incomprehensible length of time. "Can you estimate its age?" Alara asked. Analysis of external degradation patterns suggests a minimum of 50,000 years of exposure to space conditions. However, this estimate assumes materials similar to known compositions. Given the unknown nature of the construction materials, actual age could be significantly greater. The signal continued pulsing from deep within the vessel, unchanged in its rhythm despite their proximity. It wasn't a beacon designed to draw visitors. It seemed more like some essential system still functioning long after its operators had vanished. Detecting minimal energy readings from specific sections of the vessel, the AI continued. However, these readings do not correlate with standard propulsion or life support systems. Purpose unknown. Alara made her decision. Prepare docking procedures. Identify potential entry points. "Captain, I must emphasize the extreme risk factor in boarding an unknown vessel of alien origin. Containment protocols for potential biological, technological, or mimetic hazards are beyond this ship's capabilities." She understood the risks perfectly well. Unknown pathogens, hostile defense systems, even the possibility of time dilation effects or reality distortions inside a ship of such advanced design. But the allure of being the first human to set foot on a vessel that predated human civilization was too powerful to resist. Noted, prepare my EVA suit with full hazard protocols. I'll take the portable scanner and standard equipment package, and prepare a continuous data uplink to ship's storage. After identifying what appeared to be a damaged airlock or maintenance access on the vessel's ventral surface, Alara maneuvered the Stardust alongside it. The size difference made the docking procedure feel like mooring a rowboat to an aircraft carrier. Sealed in her exploration suit with its familiar weight of weapons, tools, and scanning equipment, Alara stood in the Stardust's airlock. Her heart pounded with a mixture of scientific curiosity and primal fear. Commencing EVA, she announced, both for the log and to steady herself. Maintaining contact on standard frequencies. If communication is lost for more than 2 hours, initiate emergency protocols and transmit all collected data to the nearest Union beacon. Acknowledged, the AI responded. Please exercise extreme caution, Captain. The airlock cycled, and Alara pushed off into open space, the maneuvering thrusters on her suit guiding her toward the alien vessel. As she approached, the scale became even more apparent. The damage she had identified was barely large enough for her to pass through, a mere perforation in the vast hull. The material of the ship defied easy categorization. It wasn't metal, exactly, nor was it stone or any synthetic material she recognized. It felt almost like petrified wood under her gloved hand, organic in structure, but transformed into something more durable by time or design. The breach led into a narrow passage that widened as she proceeded. Her suit lights illuminated surfaces covered in intricate patterns that might have been decorative or might have been writing, flowing symbols that seemed to change subtly when viewed from different angles. I've entered the vessel, she reported. Atmosphere present, but thin, approximately 0.7 of Earth standard. Breathable with low oxygen content. Temperature at -15 Celsius. Some illumination provided by what appear to be crystal formations embedded in the walls. These crystals emitted a soft, blue-green light that pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. The effect was both beautiful and unsettling, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. The passageway opened into a larger chamber with multiple branches leading off in different directions. The architecture followed no human design logic. Ceilings varied in height without apparent purpose. Walls curved and joined at unusual angles, and what might have been control surfaces appeared in locations that would be awkward for human use. I'm detecting faint power signatures deeper in the structure, Alara reported, following the reading on her scanner. The signal is stronger here, but still originating from somewhere deeper inside. As she explored further, evidence of the vessel's former occupants became apparent. What might have been furniture, strange, curved platforms and nested, bowl-like structures, lay abandoned in some rooms. Artifacts of unknown purpose rested on surfaces. Crystalline objects with complex internal structures, devices with no obvious controls, and what appeared to be information storage units with no compatible interface. In one chamber, Alara discovered what she interpreted as a disaster scene. Scattered objects, damage to interior structures, and dark stains on surfaces that her scanner identified as containing organic compounds. Something catastrophic had happened here millennia ago. I'm seeing evidence of what might have been conflict or some form of accident, she reported. Damage patterns are inconsistent with weapon impacts, more like something erupted from within the materials themselves. As she ventured deeper into the vessel, following the strengthening signal, Alara began experiencing a disquieting sensation. At first, she attributed it to the natural anxiety of exploring an alien environment, but it grew more specific. A feeling of being observed, analyzed, perhaps even recognized. Systems around her began to respond to her presence. Lights brightened subtly as she entered chambers. Doorways that appeared sealed parted silently as she approached. Once, she distinctly heard what sounded like a distant mechanical movement after she'd examined a particular console. Something's active in here, she whispered, her voice tense. The ship is responding to my presence. It may have some form of automated systems still functioning. The signal led her through a bewildering maze of corridors and chambers, each more enigmatic than the last. In some areas, the ship appeared completely dormant, covered in a film of ancient dust. In others, systems hummed with quiet energy, crystal displays flickering with symbols that rearranged themselves as she watched. After hours of careful exploration, Alara reached what appeared to be a central chamber, a vast, dome-shaped space with a crystalline structure at its center. The crystal, easily the size of a small shuttle, pulsed with inner light that synchronized perfectly with the signal she'd been tracking. "I've located the signal source," she reported, her voice hushed with awe. "It's some kind of crystalline core, possibly a central processor or power source. The architecture around it suggests this is the heart of the vessel." As Alara approached the crystal, the signal intensity increased dramatically. Her suit's neural interface began picking up patterns that bypassed her auditory senses entirely, impressions of meaning forming directly in her mind. It wasn't communication in any conventional sense. There were no words, no linear thoughts. Instead, she experienced disjointed fragments: containment, guardian, warning, hunger, preserve. These concepts flashed through her consciousness, accompanied by emotional impressions of urgency and ancient patience. "Something's attempting to interface with my suit's systems," she reported, her voice strained. "I'm receiving, I'm not sure what to call it. Not exactly a message, but..." The fragmentary communication intensified as she drew closer to the crystal core. Suddenly, with a clarity that felt like a shout after whispers, a coherent thought formed in her mind. "You should not be here. You endanger the seal." Alara stumbled backward, momentarily overwhelmed by the force of the communication. "Contact established with some form of intelligence," she gasped into her calm. "It's warning me about a seal? A containment? Something about danger." The crystal's pulsing accelerated, and the light within shifted from blue to a wary amber. The fragmentary communications continued, more organized now, as though the entity was learning to structure its thoughts for her comprehension. "I am the guardian, last sentinel of the star library. You have awakened systems dormant for ages. Your presence weakens the containment." "I mean no harm," Alara said aloud, unsure if the entity could understand spoken language or merely the neural patterns of her thoughts. "I followed your signal. Who are you? What is this place?" The response came in a flood of impressions and concepts that Alara's mind struggled to organize into coherent understanding. Images of a civilization far more advanced than humanity, beings of both physical and energy-based composition. A culture that had reached the limits of biological existence and begun the process of transcending into patterns of pure information. This vessel, the Star Library, was their legacy, a repository of knowledge and preserved consciousness from a species that had chosen to transcend physical form. The crystalline core contained not just information but actual consciousness, digitized beings suspended in a matrix of exotic matter. But something had gone terribly wrong. The devourer came, the guardian communicated. Entity of void, consumer of thought. It hunts knowledge, consciousness, feeds on information complexity. Through a series of fragmented impressions, Alara understood. Another entity, something ancient and predatory, had attacked the library, drawn to the concentrated information and consciousness within. The guardian had fought to protect the repository, eventually managing to trap the entity within a section of the crystal matrix itself, creating a prison of pure information. But both the guardian and the devourer had been damaged in the conflict. The guardian, once the collective intelligence that maintained the library, was now a fragmentary consciousness, barely able to maintain the containment. And the containment was weakening. Your presence, energy signature, disrupts patterns, weakens barriers. Devourer stirs. As if in response to this warning, the chamber trembled. Systems that had remained dormant for millennia suddenly activated, displays flickering with urgent symbols. The crystal's amber glow deepened toward red in places, like blood seeping into water. "What can I do?" Alara asked, understanding the catastrophic implications. If this devourer escaped, it potentially represented a threat beyond human comprehension, an entity that consumed information and consciousness itself. The Guardian's response came with greater difficulty, as though something was interfering with the communication. Two paths: reinforce containment or destruction protocol. Both require sacrifice. The chamber shuddered again, more violently. In the depths of the crystal, Alara could now perceive a darker movement, like a shadow within shadow, writhing against invisible constraints. The Devourer awakens, the Guardian communicated. Your decision must be swift. Through a series of technical impressions, Alara understood the options. She could help the Guardian reinforce the containment field by connecting her ship's power systems to the library and essentially sacrificing the Stardust drive core, stranding herself here indefinitely. Or she could activate a destruction protocol that would collapse the entire structure, destroying the library, the Guardian, the Devourer, and likely herself as well. As she struggled with this impossible choice, a third communication channel unexpectedly opened in her mind. Darker, more seductive, promising infinite knowledge. Release ME, it whispered. I can show you wonders beyond comprehension. The secrets of 1,000 dead civilizations. Technologies to make your kind gods. The voice of the Devourer was beautiful in its temptation, resonating with Alara's lifelong quest for knowledge and discovery. It promised her not just information, but understanding, the true comprehension that she had always sought in her exploration. Do not listen, the Guardian warned. It consumes, leaves nothing. Your mind, your species, all would be sustenance. The chamber's systems were now in chaos. Dormant defense mechanisms activated, crystal projections emerging from walls and ceiling, aimed inward at the core. The entire structure of the library seemed to be preparing for some cataclysmic containment measure. Alara had minutes, perhaps less, to decide. If I help you reinforce the containment, what happens to me? She asked the Guardian. Unknown. Power transfer requires proximity. Danger high. Survival. Uncertain. And if I trigger the destruction protocol? Library ends. Knowledge lost. Devour destroyed. Escape window small. The Devourer's voice intruded again, more insistent. They fear what I offer. Knowledge is power. I can give you all of it. Release me and become more than human. Alara closed her eyes, forcing herself to think clearly despite the chaos around her and the conflicting voices in her mind. The Guardian represented the remnant of a civilization that had valued knowledge enough to preserve it for eternity. The Devourer threatened not just this repository, but potentially all thinking beings if released. Her decision crystallized. Tell me how to reinforce the containment, she told the Guardian. The instructions flowed into her mind, complex but comprehensible with her engineering background. She needed to create a resonance field between her ship's drive core and the library's crystalline matrix, essentially creating a power transfer that would strengthen the information patterns containing the Devourer. I need to return to my ship, she told the Guardian. I'll establish the connection from there. Hurry, came the response, weaker now. Barriers failing. Alara turned and ran back through the labyrinthine corridors, her suit lights catching glimpses of systems in disarray. Doorways that had opened smoothly now stuttered. Crystal illumination flickered erratically, and in some passages, the very structure of the vessel seemed to distort, stretching and compressing in ways that defied physics. The Devourer's influence was spreading. There is no escape, its voice whispered in her mind. The Guardian weakens. I will be free with or without your assistance. Help me, and survive with knowledge beyond imagining. Alara ignored the temptation, pushing herself faster. The journey back seemed both longer and more treacherous than her inward exploration. Twice, she was forced to find alternative routes as corridors collapsed or twisted into impossible geometries before her eyes. When she finally reached the breach where she had entered, she found her ship still tethered but showing signs of the spreading chaos. The Stardust systems were fluctuating, power cycling erratically as something from the library attempted to interface with its computers. Quarantine all systems, she commanded as she propelled herself across the void and into her ship's airlock. Lock out all external connections except manual override. Inside the Stardust, Alara worked with desperate speed, reconfiguring the drive systems according to the Guardian's instructions. The process would render her ship permanently inoperable. The energy transfer would burn out essential components, but it would strengthen the containment field holding the Devourer. As she worked, The ship's AI reported escalating anomalies throughout the library vessel. Energy spikes, structural instabilities, and radiation patterns unlike anything in its database. Final warning, the AI announced. Catastrophic failure of unknown type imminent in the alien structure. Recommended action, immediate withdrawal to safe distance. Override, Alara responded, making the final connections to the modified drive system. Initiate power transfer sequence on my mark. The Devourer made one final attempt, its voice now thundering in her mind with promises and threats intermingled. You sacrifice everything for nothing. I am inevitable. I have consumed civilizations that would make yours seem like insects. Join me or perish with them. Alara placed her hand on the activation control. Mark, the stardust shuddered as its drive core flared with energy, channeling power through the makeshift connection into the library systems. The lights dimmed throughout the ship as non-essential systems went offline to fuel the massive energy transfer. Through the viewports, Alara watched as pulses of energy traveled along the connection, flowing into the alien vessel. The library's crystalline protrusions began to glow with increasing intensity, patterns of light racing across its surface in complex, geometric sequences. For several tense minutes, the transfer continued, the Stardust system's warning of imminent core collapse. Then, just as the ship's AI began emergency shutdown procedures, the connection severed itself from the alien side. Power transfer complete, the AI reported. Drive core integrity at 14% and falling. Permanent damage sustained to primary systems. Alara felt the Guardian's presence in her mind one last time. Fainter, but somehow more coherent. Containment restored. Stronger boundaries established. Thank you, Explorer. The library endures. The knowledge is preserved. The Devourer sleeps once more. Will it hold? Alara asked. For millennia more. Perhaps until the stars themselves grow cold. We shall maintain our vigil. You have earned a gift. A small crystalline data module on her console glowed suddenly. Information flooding into the Stardust's remaining operational systems. Star charts of regions unknown to human exploration. Theoretical physics concepts beyond current understanding. Mathematical proofs that would revolutionize space travel. A carefully curated selection of knowledge, enough to transform human civilization without overwhelming it, but not enough to attract the Devourer's attention to Earth. A fragment of our legacy, the Guardian explained. Use it wisely. Now go, while you still can. The nebula grows unstable. With the ship's main drive permanently disabled, Alara activated the emergency thrusters. Enough power to maneuver, but insufficient for interstellar travel. The Stardust slowly pulled away from the library, which had begun to retreat deeper into the nebula, drawn by some internal mechanism. The nebula itself was changing, swirling with increasing violence. The unusual properties that had initially intrigued Alara now amplifying to dangerous levels. Space itself seemed to bend and distort around the library as it withdrew. Calculating optimal escape vector using emergency propulsion, the AI announced. Warning, fuel reserves insufficient to reach nearest outpost or shipping lane. Alara watched as the library vanished into the heart of the nebula, which then began to collapse inward, the vast cloud of gas and exotic particles imploding toward a central point. Whatever the Guardian had done to reinforce the containment had changed the nebula itself, transforming it into an additional layer of protection around the ancient vessel. Set course for the perimeter, Alara ordered. Transmit all collected data and the library's gift to the emergency beacon network with my authorization codes. As the Stardust limped toward the edge of the rapidly contracting nebula, Alara contemplated her situation. Her ship was crippled beyond repair. Even if she escaped the nebula, she would drift in space until her supplies ran out or until someone happened to detect her emergency beacon, an unlikely prospect in this remote region. She had sacrificed everything, potentially her life, to contain a threat she barely understood, and to preserve knowledge from a civilization that had vanished before humans had even developed writing. Yet as she watched the beautiful, terrifying collapse of the nebula behind her, Elara felt a profound sense of peace. The data module from the Guardian contained enough revolutionary knowledge to advance human civilization by centuries. Her name would be remembered alongside the greatest explorers in history. More importantly, she had faced a choice between self-preservation and something larger than herself, and she had chosen right. The stardust cleared the nebula's perimeter just as the implosion reached its climax. For a moment, space itself seemed to fold around the collapsing cloud, and then it was gone. The entire nebula compressed into a point of singularity that winked out of existence, taking the library, the Guardian, and the Devourer with it. Nebula collapse complete. The AI reported unnecessarily. No trace remains detectable. Emergency beacon activated. Calculating survival time frame based on remaining supplies. Elara barely heard the AI's continuing assessment of their dire situation. Her attention was focused on the data module, which continued to glow with gentle pulses of light similar to the crystal core of the library. Within it lay knowledge that would transform humanity's understanding of the universe, and a warning about what else might exist in the vastness of space. Her expedition had discovered something beyond mere alien artifacts or cosmic phenomena. She had encountered a fragment of a civilization so advanced that they had transcended physical form, a glimpse of what humanity might one day become. And she had confronted an entity that preyed on knowledge itself, a reminder that even in the evolution toward pure information, dangers would remain. As the emergency beacon pulsed its distress signal into the void, Elara turned her attention to the ship's remaining power. Perhaps there was a way to extend life support to survive long enough for rescue. The odds were minuscule, but she had faced worse in the Silent Nebula. The universe had shown her wonders beyond imagination and terrors beyond comprehension. Whatever her fate, she had touched something eternal and preserved it for the future of her kind. Somewhere in the endless dark between stars, the echo of the Guardian's final words remained with her. The library endures. The knowledge is preserved. And for Elara Vance, charting the unknown had never been about the destination, but about the discoveries along the way. Even now, adrift in the void with uncertain survival prospects, she regretted nothing.